In the last few weeks I've been away quite a bit, but the most important one that I went to was a gentleman who is an educational researcher and probably one of the best in the world. He's a New Zealand gentleman by the name of John Hattie. And John Hattie, along with a lot of things, talks about the importance of feedback. Now that's not just feedback from your teacher to you to tell you what you did wrong or how to fix something, although that's really, really important. It's also feedback from you guys back to me. For example, if I get you to do a task and you all are only getting to a certain point, it shows me that you've not understood something really important, and then I need to go back and rethink about the way that I'm teaching. So feedback, and I think I've explained this to you before, is a two-way street. So watching your successes and your failures are for both of us to learn from and to get better with. So what I'm going to show you here is a really important thing that will hopefully help you when you're in an exam, when you're writing an essay, in art and in other subject areas. And this is this idea of Solo's taxonomy. So what is Solo's taxonomy? Basically, it refers to this idea of both surface learning and deep learning. What are you talking about next? Okay, teachers spend most of their time talking at you, especially when you're in stage 6. And most of what we're delivering to you is content. And even when we question you, it's only really recall that we're asking from you. We're not really asking you to actually work through conceptually on a much deeper level some of the things that we've actually presented to you. It's only in art that I can talk about this when I've sent you away to do homework that some of you have started to enter into what we call deep learning. Now let me give you some examples of what it means, and so you start to understand this. So with Solo's taxonomy, basically what he's saying is there are 4 different levels. We've got the 2 top ones are surface learning, and the 2 bottom ones, 3 and 4, are your deep learning. Now, we'll get to Guernica in a sec, but essentially the first step is you can give me a very quick answer. And if I was to say to you, who painted Guernica, you'd all be able to say to me, Pablo Picasso. It's one idea. Very easy, and you don't have to know anything very much at all to give me that bit of information. Now the next point, again, is still just surface information. It's not requiring you to think deeply. It's only requiring you to recall information that I've taught you. And that is this idea here. Outline at least 2 compositional principles that Picasso used in Guernica. So that's talking about compositional, the layout. So if we think about it, there's more than 2, but let's come up with as many different compositional principles that Picasso used in Guernica. The triptych? Okay, very good. Don't forget these answers either, because they're going to be very useful to the next 2 steps. So we've got the idea of a triptych. What else?
Large scale.
Large scale. Excellent. What else?
Collage on the horse, so it's referred to newsprint.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Monochromatic use of colours, excellent. The use of triangles is a very important component of the composition. What style did he use?
Abstraction.
There's some abstraction, but what's the name of the particular movement that he was involved with? Cubism. With Cubism we get fragmentation. All those things are really basic recall information about the layout of this painting. But they're all dealing with many ideas about how it looks. Essentially what we're doing is describing what it looks like. So description, although you have to use specific language, is not requiring a lot from you in terms of brain power. It's when we step into the relational and extended abstract thinking that it starts to get a little bit more tricky. So, and you guys can answer this stuff because you're very, very clever. So if we start looking at relational stuff, so basically what we mean by relational is applying your knowledge across and through history, and it's not just based on that particular artwork. You're starting to think a lot more from, I suppose, your general knowledge of art. So if we look at how does Guernica as a work of art relate to your knowledge of the traditions of art, it's asking for not just your knowledge of Picasso's artwork Guernica, it's asking for your knowledge of other stuff as well. So it wants you to relate your knowledge of other stuff that you know about the history of art to this particular artwork. Now I want you to try and remember some of the stuff that I taught you. Now you guys beautifully were able to say things like, I'll say the triptych. Where did Picasso get the idea for the triptych? Who inspired him? The raft? No, even further back than that. Church. On the front of an altar, in the olden days, they had a triptych, which usually was basically a biblical story. Okay, so the triptych originally comes from the history of art and a very significant part. Remember, he was Catholic, he came from Spain. Now, who told me it was big? Okay, what's so significant about that historically? Because he got the idea from somebody else, it wasn't his own.
The romantics. So the idea of action and something happening.
You're on the right track, but you're starting to use your, see how you're having to really think here? You're starting to pick up on important things. Remember I was telling you about the hierarchy of art? We talked about biblical art, historical artworks, then we get into landscapes, portraiture, and still life. Do you vaguely remember me talking to you about that? Which ones are at the top? Historical events, historical images, and they were big. Still lifes were usually small. So the bigger a painting was, historically, the more important it was. So he's actually he's forcing his audience, as well as us at the moment, to actually think back and relate our knowledge of art to what he has done. Shanari.
Isn't he saying Guernica is actually a massive deal in historical events? Then that's why
Yes, he does start to make that kind of connection. Very good. Can you see how we're starting to relate the ideas in his work to the works of other artists? What else can you come up with historically? Very good. Spanish Civil War. In particular, what artwork do you know that was very influential in the creation of Guernica? Goya's artwork. Remember what it was called? 3rd of May. Good girl. So, again, what we're getting here is the relationship between Picasso, his historical and, I suppose, his own national references to the history of art, and in particular Goya, because Goya was really the first artist who started to paint the horrors of war. And we know that Guernica was also not trying to make any reference to the heroics at all. He was actually showing us the horrors of war. Can you see how we've gone from very easy to remember descriptive information into starting to apply across our general knowledge of art? Does that make sense so far? Okay, the next step down. And this is where we need to aim for. And I'm starting to see elements of this with a lot of you already, which is great. So if you start to understand what it is that you're doing, then you'll know that that's what you need to do more of. So in connection again to Picasso's Guernica, what we need to start thinking about here, if you want to change this from extended abstract to big picture to help you remember that it's one idea, multiple ideas, relational ideas, big picture ideas. What do we consider Picasso was communicating through his painting Guernica? So what's the big picture? What are all those big picture ideas that we've already discussed about this artwork in the past lessons?
The horrors of war.
The horrors of war. Excellent. What else?
It's like history repeating itself.
Good. History repeating itself. This is supposed to hurt your brain. It's okay.
Nothing is achieved through war.
Okay. War is pointless. Nothing is achieved. And who are the greatest affected by it? The innocent. What else is he telling us through this painting? You guys mentioned to me in your description that it was monochromatic. Why is that significant? Newspapers. What's the big picture? What's the importance of newspapers? What's the importance of media?
Communication.
Good girl. So we talk about how communication, how do artists get their ideas and how do audiences respond to ideas, the importance of media translating that information, and how we can learn about the tragedies across the face of the planet at the moment. I was watching TV last night. What tragedy did I see? Syria. Sorry?
One at Bangkok.
Bangkok, but I was thinking about a war. I saw Syria, and I thought, oh my God, that's just like Guernica. And who was suffering? The ordinary person. So what else can we say about Guernica? What was he warning us about? Because remember, he painted this before the Second World War started.
A second large-scale war.
That's right. Second large-scale war. And he was warning the world that we've already had one horrendous war and we're heading down the track to another. So what you start to see with this solo taxonomy applied to art is that this is where you need to go with your answers. This is what the markers are looking for. Your ability to go beyond just merely describing and naming what you can see. For example, if you open up an exam paper, you're going to see an artwork, and I'm talking about section 1, the unseen part. You're going to get your artworks. They're going to give you the citation list. Most kids who don't know what to do here will tell you what it's called, tell you what it's made out of, and describe what they're looking at. And some of them are clever enough to start to describe some things in quite a bit of depth. But they're not going to get the marks because they're not doing these two things. You must learn how to relate your knowledge beyond what you can see. And then you need to bring in the big picture issues that the artist is dealing with that are happening around the world. If you can do those sorts of things with your response, then it becomes far more likely to score high. Is this making sense? Is this helpful? Right. Okay, so let's have a look at another example here with Zhu Bing's artwork. Name an artwork by Zhu Bing that uses text. What did you say?
Book from the sky.
A book from the sky. Excellent. We're going really well. Okay, name as many ways that you know that Zhu Bing uses text in his artwork. Because we're just doing description here. You've got codification, yeah? Is that the only thing he uses?
Denotation.
Denotation? How's it denotation?
It's in a different language. Wait, no.
So for a Westerner looking at it, it's just
Yeah.
denoting a language.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll buy that one. Anything else? What's the citation list? Okay, what's the connotations of that? Come on, guys. You went back and looked at my feedback, surely. When you finish something, it doesn't mean it's finished. What was the book? Why is it so important about that title?
It was like he showed the environment of like the Chinese like landscape, and the scribes were hanging from the ceiling, and the books on the floor showing the waves.
You're describing, you're not telling me stuff. I'm taking you into here. Can you see where we're already going?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm right, but because the book's coming from the sky, like all the politicians were seen as the people with the most knowledge, and so whatever information they gave to the lower class, they would believe them. But because the characters aren't real characters, it's false information. It's like manipulative.
Thank you. It's a great answer. But a book from the sky was his way of action. This is why I got in trouble, because it's about escapism. You cannot control someone's mind if they don't let you. Okay, and that's why he calls it. Where does your head can go anywhere. I can't contain you in this classroom. I might try, but I can guarantee that you tune in and out throughout the lesson. I know I do when someone's talking at me for 50 minutes. It's exhausting. Okay? So this idea of book from the sky is a very important aspect here, and we're still only at description. When we start to get down here, was when we start to give evidence, and that's what we just started to do. For what is the connotations? What does the citation mean? What is the evidence that we can see for this artwork? We're starting to give it relational information. It's deeper stuff. It's the stuff you go looking for on the internet, no one writes. It's the stuff that you're having to go looking for, and you have to go, oh damn, I have to actually come up with these ideas myself. Okay? And then you get down into this. How does the use of text in Zhu Bing's artworks allow him to make confrontational observations and comments on China's past and present? Again, big picture issues. Now, if you can't get to here and here, then you're not going to be able to get the higher marks in section 1. Okay? You're going to say, oh my goodness, miss, how do I do that? So, if we look at the question that I originally gave you, which was artists are inspired and influenced by the world around them, that's the statement. They are telling you, the examiners are telling you, that artists are inspired and influenced. Now, they can be inspired in good ways, they can be inspired in bad ways, but they are definitely going to be influenced by what's going on around them. Sometimes they go and become quite introverted because of that, and other times they want to stand up and rebel, and other times they stand up and are very clever, like Zhu Bing was, and very carefully crafted a response to what his experience was living in China at that time. So, there's your statement. Now here comes your question, or your instructions. Discuss the artwork Book from the Sky by Zhu Bing as what? As a reflection of his own and his audience's understanding of the world. So they've given you two pretty hefty things to do. They're telling you right from the outset that artists are inspired and influenced. And you guys should go, yeah, well, that's obvious they are. You have to immediately start going, okay, so how was Zhu Bing inspired and influenced by the world around him? And how is that reflected in his artwork? And how do audiences respond to that? So, we've got a simple statement answering how Book of the Sky is a reflection of Zhu Bing's world. So kids will give you an introduction. They will say, a book from the Sky by Zhu Bing is a reflection of his own and his audience's understanding of the world. And as a marker, you say, how? You might be lucky and the kid will tell you how. And if they tell you how, in this first part here, you get a taste as the marker that you might start to get into that deeper learning, that deeper understanding. What we'll then normally see happen is a description of the artwork, how it was made, and the significant links that these physical attributes have to his cultural heritage, possibly considers the audience as a part of the response. This is still only in surface understanding. It's still just describing what you can see. You're starting to talk about how audiences would view it when they come in, but there's no real deep thinking happening here about why things are the way they are. The next one, relational. This is where you really need to step up. You need to explain, and this is where I was just prodding you a moment ago, explain how the evidence in the artwork, that's the layout, that may be the way text has been used, how these things demonstrate what, how he was inspired and what he was influenced by. You need to know some historical information. You need to know something generally about China to be able to start to answer this stuff. So you would talk about communism. You would talk about the average person. You would talk about the way that communism basically took the power away from the intellectuals and made everybody the same. And the impact that had on him. And the impact that also had on the rest of the Chinese population and the audience who would have seen it. You also would know that he deliberately chooses to use text that has no meaning. And for the Chinese government, they get really upset by that. It's like, what is the underlying message here? What are you trying to do? And they shut his first exhibition down because they thought he was challenging them. But they couldn't prove that he was, although he was. What else do we know about calligraphy in China? What's the significance of calligraphy?
It's the highest form of art.
Good girl, it's the highest form of art making. So he's chosen to use something with such a long history in China to make his art. The importance of the written word in Chinese culture is, I suppose, the highest point for all the language. Yet the fact that he's chosen to use a language that no one can understand starts to speak volumes about what's happening with communism and its impact on their culture. You then start to discuss those things in more detail here. How does the world influence and inspire artists like Zhu Bing? You might have a few other Chinese artists that you know, or you might want to bring in Picasso or whoever else, because it's not saying that you only have to talk about Zhu Bing. You can actually start to make connections to other artists to support what you have been saying about Zhu Bing. Are you following what I'm saying here? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. Let's have a look at this. This is a classic example of a 5-mark question, which is normally question 1 in section 1 of your exam. And this is what I would look at before I start to mark your responses. I would also sit down and actually craft my own response and consider all the different ways that you could possibly respond to such a question. But essentially, what we're looking at, and we'll go from the bottom up, the conceptual framework is used simplistically. So we're referring to the question that we've just been looking at, discuss Zhu Bing's book From the Sky. The conceptual framework is used simplistically in the discussion. The source material relies on obvious features and may be listed, described, and or reiterated. That's that basic 1 or maybe 2 or 3 ideas. We're not doing much at all. 1 mark. Second one. The conceptual framework is used in a general way to structure the discussion. Source material is reasonably sound, but may be referred to in an uneven way. So again, we're still getting just description, some suggestions of the way the interplay between artist, audience, and artwork. There's some understanding, but it's general. And it's not really explicitly dealt with from Book From the Sky. It's just generalised. Here we start to see evidence of deeper understanding. The student who's writing uses their understanding of the conceptual framework in a methodical way to build a logical exploration of how artists and audiences are inspired and influenced by the world. The source material is used in a generally coherent way, but the argument tends to be more descriptive. So they're starting to look for a little bit more information. They're looking for how well you understand how the agencies operate, but to get into those higher areas, we're still not getting enough evidence here to support. A kid here could actually use words like codification, denotation, but they're not explaining how it's being used or how codification is used or how denotation can be seen. They're not giving us where the evidence of that is. Yeah? Up here, what we're getting is a sophisticated way to build a comprehensive and well-reasoned description and explanation. So basically what the student is doing is they're telling you, they're giving you the big picture, they're describing and explaining through the evidence that's there in front of them why it's so. Now remember, I've told you this many times. If you can justify it and it sounds believable, they will give you the marks. Okay? But this is what you need to aim for. We've got 10 minutes. Let me show you an example. Okay. Here's an example from an artwork from the past. It's a question 1. You probably can't see it very well. First thing you need to think about is what kind of a question is this in terms of the syllabus?
Art practice.
It's art practice. Oh, it's a dead giveaway. It says, analyse the art practice of Linda Dement in her work Typhoid Mary. But it's only worth 4 marks, so we're not going to ask for a great deal of information here. So go and have a look at the citation list. What is this artwork? Well, we know it's by this artist called Linda Dement. It's called Typhoid Mary, and we can see it was made quite recently, 1995, and it's a digitally manipulated image. So, basic idea. What's this artwork about? Self-harm? Yeah? This artwork is about self-harm. Do you know what typhoid is? Don't you guys read? Okay, let's give you a definition of typhoid. Oh, okay. Typhoid fever is contracted by the ingestion of contaminated food or water. Diagnosis of typhoid fever is made when the salmonella bacteria is detected within your poo. Typhoid fever symptoms are poor appetite, headaches, generalised aches and pains, fever and lethargy, and it will kill you. Okay, so you often hear in the news, they freak out when there starts to be this kind of stuff floating around. When there's floods and stuff, you start to get stagnated water and typhoid starts to become proliferate through a population. Often it is transferred through bodily fluids. So then you start to see how important the citation list happens to be to understanding the artwork. Now, if you're stuck in an exam and you don't know, then, just do the best you can, don't panic. You just go, I don't know what that special clue is. Just go from there. You can tell it's a digitally manipulated image, so you can talk about how it's being constructed. You can see this artwork's got text. I don't know whether you can see what it says just there. This says cut, wet, and down here, like the touch of a lover. Okay, you probably can't see it very well. So, we've got another 5 minutes. I just want you to quickly talk to the person alongside of you and try to go from the surface understanding of what you see here to starting to actually give me reasons or evidence of what you can see there. So if it's about self-harm, what can you see here that we can start to build on as a believable argument? So, a couple of minutes.
Because of lava. It's like a car. I don't know. It's like a car.
It's whatever you think it is, okay? Like the touch of a lover. All right, because we're running out of time, I'm going to come around and ask each and every one of you to give me something. All right? Claire, you're first. You're lucky, you're first.
Damn it. We said that the use of text on the bottom, like the touch of the lava, we said that was like sort of like duality, because it's obviously like harmed and cuts. It's not the touch of the lover.
Okay, so the touch of her lover has been quite violent.
Yeah.
Okay, but what's the evidence? We want to go deep. You've just given me surface. You're telling me what's there. Go deeper. What's the evidence? What can you see here that's going to justify what you said? You've got the text,
Yeah,
but what's supporting that?
The arm, because it's all bleeding.
Okay. Mia.
Yes. Yes. What we would say is like how the silver stuff in the background kind of in blades.
Yep.
And then that's like reinforced like the wound on the arm as well as on the hand. So like the hand touch of the lover kind of links together in a way.
Okay, you were still describing. We need to go deeper. Christine.
I don't know, like, you know the steps at the bottom? It's like,
These ones? Yeah.
it's like a journey of the person's life, and knowing that they're committing suicide, they might go to hell, which can be shown by the fire.
Okay. Can you hear what she just did? She's starting to give us deeper concepts here. Doesn't matter whether she's right or wrong. She's starting to talk about a journey that could be evident here in what she has seen as steps. And she's talking about hell, talking about suicide, big picture stuff. Do you understand what she just did? Brilliant work, Christine.
When I saw typhoid, I didn't know what it was, so I assumed it could be associated with like blood, and I thought Bloody Mary, and that would support the fact that like because of the bodily harm on the person's arm, they could be like they're about to end their life, and it's really like the touch of the lover. They're trying to say, I can't say it properly.
I'll answer it for you. Sweet release from this life is like the touch of a lover.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you guys can see it, because we're just about to run out of time. This looks like glass.
Yeah.
So much easier to slice into this. It's a very violent image. So it's really starting to explore the violence of self-harm and what leads to self-harm. And the idea of big picture, a lot of people actually enjoy, and it's almost like a sexual fulfillment that they have from cutting themselves. And then this idea, like the touch of a lover, I mean, it's a really twisted headspace. But what I'm pushing you to do is to start to think of the bigger issues that this is dealing with in terms of society, rather than just looking at what you can see on the surface. Saved by the bell. Okay, I'll just stop this before you go anywhere.